The worst part of my labor, both of my labors, the absolute worst pain I've ever been in. Hey guys, so I just got done filming Oliver's birth video, and now I'm making this little girl's birth video. If you haven't seen Oliver's birth video yet, I'm going to link it in the description. With Willow, I had a very healthy pregnancy, very normal. At that point, we were living in Arizona, so I did get dehydrated once, and we did end up going to the hospital for that, just to make sure everything was okay, make sure the baby was okay. She was a lot more healthy, and I was healthier and everything. So after you have a premature baby, you have to take these shots, progesterone shots, which just help avoid another preterm baby. So with her, I did take those shots. I'm not sure if they helped or not, because obviously there's no way to tell, but I did go full term with her. Now, even though I was full term when I had her, she still had an eventful birth with some complications and issues. So I'm going to be talking about that. Other than the progesterone shots every week, I was taking them. I had to go in and get the shots every week. She was a lot healthier and had a pretty good pregnancy. She ended up being born at 38 weeks and 5 days. So I went into labor with her at 11 o'clock at night on July 2nd of this year. So she is almost 6 months old, a few days. I started having contractions. I was having contractions on and off for a while now, like a few days at least. And throughout my pregnancy, I had a little bit of contractions, but they started getting a lot more often the past few days. But they weren't painful. They were just, like little cramps, a little bit annoying. And then at this point, at 11 o'clock at night, I started getting the contractions, and they ended up being about 10 minutes apart. They changed a little bit, but about 10 minutes. I spent a few hours timing them because I couldn't sleep. They were just too painful. Tyler was sleeping because he had to, deal with Oliver or be there for me, and I wanted him to sleep. I dealt with contractions, timed them until 4 o'clock in the morning, which is when they started getting a lot more painful. I went in early because of my 1 hour labor. I decided that I want to be early just in case anything happens. I don't want to have the baby at home in our little apartment. 4 a.m. I decided the contractions got too bad to really, they started getting worse. They weren't excruciating at this, but they started getting more painful, and I woke Tyler up. I said, I've been having contractions since 11 o'clock. I've been awake, I haven't slept, they're starting to get worse, and I think we should go to the hospital. We got there, they checked me, I believe, and it was 4 centimeters. The other day when they did a membrane sweep about a week before I went into labor, and it was 1 centimeter then. It might not have been a week, it might have been like 4 days. We got to the hospital, and I was 5 centimeters dilated and 40% effaced. So we decided to call Tyler's great aunt, who was the only one that lived in the same state as us, so she was going to watch Oliver while I had the baby. I ended up getting the epidural because I know that I could have done it because I did it before, but the nurses at this hospital were a little less helpful. I felt like I needed it, so I got the epidural. Right after I got it, Tyler and Oliver went to get food, and after they got food, they were going to go meet up with his aunt. When I got the epidural, it didn't work right away. He said it was going to take about a half hour to work. It didn't. It took a few hours for it to really work for me. So I was still in pain when he left, and then as he was gone getting food, one of the nurses checked me again, just I don't know, just to see how I was doing, and I ended up being 9 centimeters and 100% effaced after my epidural. It happened pretty quickly, just like my previous labor, but after I was at 9 centimeters, I called Tyler. I said, I'm at 9 centimeters. You might want to, come back so that you're here when the baby's born. And I was starting to panic because I was like, okay, it's going to happen now. It was probably 9 or 10 o'clock. 9, I want to say. I don't know. My doctor was actually at an emergency C-section at the time. He said after he was done with his C-section, he was gonna come break my water, which was gonna, you know, really get things moving, get the baby to drop down because the baby was still kind of high up. He was gone for hours after, so I was pretty much just sitting around with my epidural, thinking any minute this baby's gonna come out. But it ended up being, I want to say, like 12. That was a different time zone because we actually lived in Arizona at the time. After sitting around for hours, just Tyler was playing a game, I was just laying there. I didn't get any sleep the night before. I decided I'm not going to sleep because I could push this baby out any second and I want to be awake for it. So when the doctor came in to break my water, he got everything ready. He was about to do it. He looked inside and my water broke on its own. It splashed all over him, which my husband thought was so hilarious. They checked me again. The baby was still very high up and the baby was actually turned the wrong way. I think she might have been back to back, or sideways or something. Just they didn't like it how she was positioned. So I was laying on my side trying to move around, trying to see what I can do to turn the baby to how we want her to be. The risk of her being high up after my water has broken like she was is that the umbilical cord could wrap around her neck because there's so much room for it to move around. And so that was the first really concern. I mean, she was turned the wrong way. That was another concern, but I don't think it was like the hugest deal. I'm not sure. I was getting contractions. My water had already broken and she was starting to get lower, which was awesome. And then we found out from the monitor that every contraction I had, her heart rate would drop very low. It wasn't exactly life-threatening at that point. It was just they wanted to take precautions just in case it took a turn for the worst. I had to use an oxygen mask just to help myself be less tense so that her heart rate would stop dropping, I believe. Well, after all this, the baby was still high up. The nurse actually told me to just do like a practice push just to see if I can get her a little lower, just so we can get things moving along and hurry up because her heart rate was dropping and it wasn't good. It ended up helping a lot, and so they're like, all right, we're gonna get the doctor in, we're gonna start pushing, we're gonna have this baby. So at this point I was pushing and she was getting lower, it was progressing, it was all going good, but her heart rate was still dropping, which we wanted to start thinking about getting her out as fast as possible as this was happening so that no other complications would happen. Just they ended up using a vacuum to get her out. It's like a suction that goes on her head and, you know, helps pull her out. She came right out. When she came out, she was actually white, like ghost white, like whiter than me. She was so white. I took her over, measured her, did everything, and she ended up being just fine. Her color came back in and she came over to me and she was perfectly fine, healthy. She was 6 pounds, 13 ounces, and 20.5 inches long. The worst part of my labor, both of my labors, the absolute worst pain I've ever been in, is what happens next. So after she was born, I was holding her. We were all happy and everything, but my placenta just was still in. My placenta didn't want to come out on its own, which is a risk of infection, so they want it to come out right away. So if the placenta hasn't come out within a half hour, they consider it an issue. They want to get it out. Now this part might get a little graphic. So after that half hour, my placenta wouldn't come out. It was still in there. The doctor was concerned. He looked at me and he said, I'm gonna have to go in. I'm gonna have to go in and get it out and pull it out. So he had to use his arm to go elbow deep inside of me and separate my placenta from my uterus and pull it out by like manually because it was stuck. Either you can pull it out manually and then you could get it out surgically if you can't pull it out. I was sitting there and I was just very concerned that I was gonna have to get surgery to get this placenta out of me. I had my epidural, but it wore off at this point. And it was just the most excruciating pain that I have ever been in my entire life. It was so bad. It hurt more than my natural labor. And I was sitting there holding my newborn baby that just came out of me. Make sure I didn't squeeze her or drop her or anything while I was in this pain. It took a while. The doctor really just was like struggling, really trying to get this out of me. Blood was actually pouring out of me too because he had his arm inside of me, and I just had a baby, and I was bleeding a lot, and they had me look out for hemorrhaging after getting my placenta ripped out of me, and they were really concerned about that, but I ended up being perfectly fine. It was just the pain that was the worst part. Eventually he got it, which was really, really awesome. I was so happy. I was in so much pain though, and after, the 15 minutes felt like the longest 15 minutes of my life. It did not feel like 15 minutes. I was in so much pain. But it finally got out. With my son, I had a very, very easy recovery. And then with her, I had an easy recovery, but I had a lot of pain in my stomach where he was pushing on it and trying to pull out my placenta. I had complications, and it was a very eventful birth, both of them. But it happened so fast that, you forget about it, and it doesn't even matter. This little girl is gonna be 6 months old in a few days. She's perfectly healthy. You do, Willow? Whoa. Yeah. I hope that these videos I'm making about my birth will help other people that have gone through the same thing or might possibly go through it in the future. I hope that they help, and I hope that they show you that even with complications, even with a premature birth, that everything can turn out okay because my babies are perfectly healthy now and everything's fine. Thank you so much for watching, and again, if you haven't seen Oliver's birth video, go check it out. I'll have a link in the description. Hit that button down below to subscribe if you want to see us more. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!